Ab Salamano, and you're at EDM America TV, and also our sister site where we'll be featuring this interview at WBMX.com with the legend, one of the first to get into the remixing game, taken from the DJ booth to the studio. Today I'm sitting here with John Luongo. John, good to talk to you finally, again.
Thanks. Thank you, Sal. Same thing here. Very nice to talk to you.
Back in the days, a lot of people always associate disco with Saturday Night Fever. That's where their history begins. But the disco and the evolution of what it's become, I mean, look at what we got involved in, John, back in the early 70s. When you started at Rhinoceros, and way back in the day, and you started doing, out of the DJ booth, and you started remixing and making things more DJ-friendly. When I was a kid, John, you're a little bit more seasoned than I am. But when I was a kid and I started, I remember pulling out Pick Me Up, I'll Dance, or, Melba Moore stuff, or, Life Was a Lady, and The Force, Real Thing, which was probably one of the coolest funk bands on the face of the earth that never made it really here in the States.
No, they didn't. They were a great band, and they came from the UK, and, they had a lot of high expectations for that song. Unfortunately, sometimes as you find out in this business, Al, the one thing I did is I always made the best recording I could. I took a song and I would not leave the studio. I mean, that was my reputation. I used to say if we were over budget or something was wrong, I'd say, look, we're at the halfway point. We cannot go back. So the only way I can do this go forward is to make sure it's great, because a hit and walking out with a great record took all the pain of over budget away. And, so I loved the fact that that was a great record. It was very interesting, innovative for its time. Some of the ones you work the hardest on, don't always click, and that's a bit of a disappointment, because I always believe that every record that I do, I want to be able to listen to in 20, 30, 50 years and say, you know what, that still sounds great. It's representative of its time, but it sounded really good. It's ageless. Much in the way that if you listen to an AC/DC records, the Stones or the Kinks, or those records, when you play them in their raw form, still sound great today, power-wise. And that's what I look for. I grew up following greatness of engineers and producers.
Yeah, they're great time
moniker.
Yeah, they're great timepieces. And do you remember the first record you ever played when you stepped into that DJ booth? Do you remember what it was? It it had to be a 45, or was it an album?
It was a 45. I actually do remember. What I did was I walked into the first place I ever played, really legitimately, was a club called the Townhouse in Boston, and that was right above. If anybody knows is familiar with Cheers, you look at that the club that they have, the bar that they have downstairs called the Bull and Finch Club, and that is a real club that was located on Beacon Street. And me and two of my friends actually went, and we were walking on break from, it was an evening after class at Northeastern where I was going. And we just walked upstairs, and we walked into the first floor, and it was like a dinner place, very upscale, with waitresses serving in the long dresses and everything. It was owned by two men, Jack Vesey and Tom Kershaw, who graduated from Harvard Business School. And then we walked up one more flight over this long marble staircase. And we went to the top, and there was a giant judge's chamber. And the only difference, with all the books and all the legal knowledge and everything in there, the only difference was it had, there was a disc jockey spinning in one of the corners near the two windows that were facing Beacon Street and the Boston Street, excuse me. And what happened is I looked at him, and he was playing records, not a person in there. And to the right of him was a bar, and there was nobody at the bar. And I walked up to him, and I said, this is great, because I had just been playing records on the radio at Northeastern without talking. It was called Morning Met, WNEU, because I was going to school. And I just played the records for the first 2 hours every morning and then go to my class. Well, I told him, I said, Peter, if you ever need anybody, here's my name. And I gave him my name in a matchbook. This is one of those wackadoo stories that you never believe. And 2 weeks later, I get a phone. I don't even believe it. I actually think I'm lying. But 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from the manager, and he said, hi, this is Jim, and Peter left. He quit and gave us your number. He said you'd be able to come and fill in. And this was a Tuesday, and I was doing my classes at Northeastern. And he said, he called me at home, my home at that time. And I said, wow, when do you want me? He said, Friday. Well, I was, my pants were brown. I said, sure, because I've learned in my life, opportunity only knocks once, and you better be ready for it. And all my life, I knew I loved music. So I went to a little place called Everett Music in Everett with Freddie Camlott, who, God rest his soul, passed away, and another person who worked there called Hector Tundador. I started buying records. I said, look, I need to get this collection together. And I bought the Isley Brothers' This Old Heart of Mine, and I bought Martha and the Vandellas, which became my closing song there, Heat Waves. And I bought, all a variety of songs, like some Stones and a couple of R&B things at that time. And when I started the evening, the first record I played, I believe at that time, was an Isley Brothers record. It was Who's That Lady? I think was the first record that I ever played. And I got some ideas on some records that I could play from listening to a disc jockey who was really great called Andrew Ruskowski, who later became my partner for a little while, and he worked at Zelda's. And Andrew's claim to fame was Zelda's, this tiny little club, had the coolest music, to the north of New York. Because Andrew would go there every week, go to these little places, buy these hip records, How Can I Forget, and, I Like What I Like, and all these strange little records, and played them, and the people go crazy. So eventually I got a couple of ideas and go and see him, and we became friends. But, it was the Isley Brothers was the first one. And my closing song was Heat Waves by Martha and the Vandellas. At the end of the night, when I put that record on, the place would go crazy, and within 10 minutes after the time it was done, everybody would clear out.
Yeah, what time was last call for you back then, John? What time was the last call?
Back then we had, back then I think it was like 12:30. That was all. We
wow. Very early.
Yeah, very, very early. So we made that club. I mean, I had that club going. There were lines around the block. You couldn't get in on a Friday and Saturday. It was impossible, absolutely impossible to get in the club. It was jammed, and people would come from all over the country. And the thing that made that club a big success was not only the music selection, but the fact that I became friends with every record promoter in the Boston area. And so Barry Corkin from A&M, Lenny Collins from Epic, Lenny Pizzi, who also was at Epic, Willis DeMalt, who was working at Motown, they would come and give me records. They couldn't get these records on the radio in the beginning, and I played them. The first place you ever heard Billy Preston, Outer Space, was at the Townhouse. The first place you ever heard Steely Dan, Do It Again, long version, was at the Townhouse. The first time you ever heard the long version of I'll Always Love My Mama was the Townhouse. And these guys came to me because they eventually saw that the program and music directors from WILD, from WBCN, the rock station, from WRKO, all would come to this club to hear what I was playing. Because I guess I have pop taste. I love all music, and I love eccentric music and unapproachable, but I love music that the masses loved. And I think this very good friend of mine, Charlie Anzalone from Buffalo, who was up there, he said the most, I don't know, it just struck me as being true. And it hit me in a very, very positive way. He said, Tom Moulton invented the mix. John Luongo brought it to the mass, and that's how I like to feel about that. The art form of dance mixing, because we were there in the beginning, nobody knew what it was. You're talking about the Wild West.
You blazed your own path back then. And, a lot of people don't realize, back then when you started before I did. I started in 78, but that was the only alternative to any kind of music, was going to the clubs. There was no, let me go online and let me go hit SoundCloud, Mixcloud, YouTube, or whatever.
No.
That was it. That was your alternative. You had that, you had AM radio.
That's exactly right. And, I mean, the only thing that there were two things that came close in Boston, which was WBCN gave you a variety of music that you would not hear all the time in traditional radio. I mean, they were probably the greatest radio station in format ever. And they're the ones that brought things like, Aerosmith and the Beacon Street Union and Orpheus. And they brought you Carole King, and they played things like Steel Eye Span. I mean, I know most of your listeners are going to say, huh? But that, to me, knowing those songs and being familiar with them made me a better mixer, producer, and has ensured my future being able to go on and do it. Because you have to love all music and be influenced by all music. The wider your musical palette is, the greater you are. The greater you can be, because you have more to draw on. So BCN did it there, and then there was this one little station, a 25-watt FM station called WTBS at MIT, broadcasting out of MIT. Doesn't sound like a lot, but they had a tower on top of the MIT building. And that tower at night Now, what people don't understand about radio back then is you had to cut your signals back because it was
Right.
the FCC had laws, and they said, all right, you got to put your signal back. WILD, the black station, went off at 6 o'clock at night. All the other stations had to pull their power transmitting down. We only had 25 watts. Right?
Was it an AM, John? Was it an AM or an FM?
It was an FM, 88.1 FM, WTBS.
Oh, okay.
Ted Turner later bought the call letters because he wanted them for his Turner broadcast system, so that's where he got them from. But
Wow.
this station would play great music. At 12 o'clock at night, there was a section of the whole programming went to black programming, and there was a show called The Ghetto, and there'd be a wide variety every night. There was a different disc jockey on every night, Reginald Mosley and JC and all these people who became friends with me later. And I would go to sleep listening to this station as a kid. And I know I had a headset on, and I'm going to forget my parents. My mom would come in the room to see if I was sleeping. They slept in the same room as my brother, a little tiny room. And I would be under the sheets, but I'd have the one earpiece in my head.
I did the same exact thing. The same thing. I did the same thing.
I'm going to feel like that, feel like if we learn a new language by going to bed subliminally. I learned about Donny Hathaway, the Black Poet. I learned about the Whispers, the whatnot, and I became unbelievably musically astute from understanding that music. I learned about, Sylvia Robinson and Joe Robinson and Donny Hathaway and Roberta Flack and Etta James. The breadth of my knowledge was unbelievable. And it was all subliminal, Sal, I did it sleeping. And then I woke up and I'd say, why do I know this? I felt like an alien. That to me was a very big defining moment in my life and my career because that opened my mind and my musical palette to R&B and many interesting kinds of music. Because I wasn't going to be a one-trick pony. I had these very first, I know we're jumping all over the place, and just because it's a train of thought, I eventually wanted to get on that station, and I couldn't get on because I was white and it was all black, okay? Mm-hmm. And that was fine. So what I did is I came up with an idea for a format to be on right before that show. So every Thursday night, they came on at 12, so from 10 to 12, there was a show in Boston that was the very first radio dance show in the world, and it was called The Right Track. And I call myself John T.C. Luongo. The reason the T.C. is because I wanted to unite the people, and everybody, there was a cartoon out at that time called Top Cat, and they said, you're like the leader of the band. You're just like, you're a magnet. Everybody wants to follow you. You're like the Pied Piper. So they started calling me TC. I said, all right, I'll be TC. And I started playing music, and the name of the show was The Right Track, the music that's making America dance. And it wasn't about disco. It wasn't about just R&B. It took everything into account. It was like I play the Commodores. Let's get started. And I play Union Man by the Cake Brothers. And then I play Sweet Bonnie Bramlett. And then I play Grace Jones. And the thing that made the show interesting is that I play it and talk about them. And there was one section in the show. Now, this was scary because, today everybody has digital editing and Pro Tools, and you see the disc jockeys up there with the Jesus pose. Give me a break. I respect what they do. I just don't respect that they don't let people know this is pre-recorded, done under a perfect circumstance where you can do it 53 times and you push a button. I did what I call Segway Serenade, and it was a 20-minute section with no non-stop music, me not talking. And I would cue those records live and spin them out over the radio live using 2 QRK turntables, which they're like friggin' Budweiser horses, flies.
Yeah.
And then what I did is I said, I want to highlight the disc jockey. So each week I take a Wendy Hunt, or I take a Stephen Burke, or I take a Jimmy Stewart, and I bring the disc jockey in. I talk to them. I talk about their club, what they did, all the different styles, and it was so informative that it didn't matter if you were black, gay, straight, your ethnicity didn't matter. I loved your artistry. And I brought those disc jockeys in, and one by one gave them a spotlight and let people hear. They would give me their pre-recorded tape, and I play it on the show so people could see what they did. And Stephen Burke, one of the disc jockeys there, said getting onto The Right Track with John Luongo was like, for a disc jockey in Boston, was like being on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And it was true, because I would let these disc jockeys be heard, and their audiences would explode. Because now, see, here's the advantage I had. On the radio, WILD, the black station, listened to me. WRKO, the pop station, listened. WBCN, the rock and roll alternative station, listened. Every station in the city had somebody monitoring my show, and that is not hyperbole, monitoring my show to see what I was playing and see what I would say would be a success.
They would cherry pick it. They were running.
Yeah. They were cherry picking. Willis DeMalt brought me a record. You'll love this story. Willis DeMalt from Motown brought me a record. He said, I don't know, what do you think? I said, I love this. I said, give me the record. I'm going on the radio. I'm playing it on my show. You listening to the show. He brought the record in, and I said, I guarantee, this is the first time the record's getting played, I guarantee I will never recommend another record if this does not come true. This will be the ¡1 record in the United States, guaranteed. And then I proceeded to play Don't Leave Me This Way by Thelma Houston.
They did a great job compared to Teddy's version. It was a great release.
They did a great job. And I told Willis to this day gives me all the credit. I get credit for a lot of records, but you know, I had great taste, but more than great taste, I had great disc jockeys. You know, I started the Boston Record Pool. I had great disc jockeys that were little mini superstars, and I would pump them up, Sal, and say, you know what, guys? In the beginning, there were like 25 of us, and then we went to 50. And at 50, I said, there's 50 of us here. If we all play the same thing a couple of times on the
You're making hits.
We are a radio station, and we can make hits. And that was the secret of the Boston Record Pool, was DJs united for a common purpose, the good of the music, the betterment of each other, and never losing sight of the quality of the record. You could not pay me enough money, I would not take bribes or anything to play a record, because I'm one of those idiots that didn't care about the money. I cared about my reputation and the integrity and the respectability, you know?
But in the end, that's why you made your living, too, is you didn't have to sell out, because the residual effect was that people knew, look, he's going to do it, he's going to make it or break it, so, you know, and you were deriving enough opportunities by keeping, staying on the straight and narrow.
That's right. Yeah, there's nothing like it. Even during the payola scams, I ran the largest club crossover company in the country, and I made everybody sign a document saying we would not transfer money, drugs, or anything, and that we were not subject to payola. Everybody who worked for me had to sign that, and that came in pretty handy when the governments closed down everybody and we were clean as a whistle.
What I found real interesting about what you just, and this takes you back to the differences of how things have changed, for lack of a better term. Look, when I see Afrojack and I see Avicii and I see Tiesto, to me, those are what the disco DJ was, and this is how far it's come. But when you started talking about radio, John, you had the ability to say, hey, I'm playing this right now. You walk into a radio station, you're basically just waiting for that stop set to come or whatever break you have to read. There is nobody at a radio station other than independents that have that freedom any longer to say, hey, man, I'm going to play this. This is going to be it. I'm playing this record. Nobody does that anymore. It's really...
It's good you bring that up. I'll tell you why it's good you bring that up, because one of my goals, it has been my goal for many years. I mean, I've gone full cycle, with all this stuff, and it was what I find out is what I want to do. I started out in radio, and while I'm going to continue, I'm going to go back to doing, I want to actually play live. If I get one more person asking me to play live, I'm going to jump out a window. It just has to be, I want to put the few weeks into it that it takes to get back on, get your skill set back. It doesn't disappear. I go into clubs and I hear a song. I know exactly where it's coming from. I understand dubstep, house, drum and bass, you name it. This is not hard anymore. It takes months, years of practice to listen over and over again. But if you're good and you put pressure on yourself like I do every night, you can get it. And you also know where every one of them came from. There's nothing I hear that is really original. Nothing. I appreciate it, and I give all the DJs all the props that they deserve. But as far as original, you all came from somewhere. And I used to drive my son nuts. My son Cody would be in the bug house. Oh, I know where that came from. I know where they stole that. He goes, Dad, stop it. But the point is, I want to go back and start I want to do a radio program, and I had kept a lot of records. Sadly, I lost a ton of them. We had like where there used to be in Connecticut, and had 3 floods, so thousands of there, were lost. But I had, I have a few thousand, and I got those, and I can use those to, basically for verification to go back as a chronological piece. You can't really, use them for anything because there's a lot of them are locked, but I do get the ability to listen to them for a reference library, and that would be what I want to do. I want to go back and educate the kids, let them know where some stuff comes from, in all genres, though. See, I was asked to be on Studio 54 radio. I said, no. I'm not going to go on Studio 54 radio because that's not what I am. I said that's very limiting. That's talking about one time period. And I'm jazz, rock and roll, R&B, funk, soul, disco, dance, and I understand dubstep. So imagine if you have somebody who's talking with authority about where something came from, tells the history about it, plays how it relates to today, and then plays a record where it came from. DJs can finally see. To me, that is the last piece missing in the puzzle. Because these kids are not arrogant, they're just ignorant. Their history started 5 years ago. And history started many, many, many years ago.
40 years ago.
Of course they did. Remember, you think the Beatles are original? They know they came from Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and B.B. King. The Stones did the same thing. There's people that came from Etta James and Fats Domino. People are hearing these names. Who the hell are they? What you do is, they were people who did what they did, whether you liked it or not. They were the epitome of their genre of music. And anybody that does something to the epitome of what they are deserves to be studied and understood so you can learn something from it. And I'm big on learning and education, but I'm big on learning, education, and entertainment. And I don't think there's enough disc jockeys out there in radio that I think they're pretty terrible. For the most part, they're all terrible. They play a pre-scripted thing, and just as you say, you go on Clear Channel, and you're going to hear a playlist. Who needs a gosh darn playlist? What disc jockeys lost, what programmers lost, what everybody lost was soul, anticipation, foresight, and gut. Those things are missing because those things don't come from call-out research. If I played a record that made the dance floor clear every time I played it for 2 weeks, every stinking time I played it, and I said, damn it, you're going to like this record, and I'm going to play it, and they could look at me like I had 15 heads, and I did not care. And then one day, Savannah Band, Shay Shay LaFemme clicked, and it was all over. And that record came from Boston. And August Darnell and Andy Hernandez and Corey Day will all tell you where that came from. That was the Boston Record Pool playing the heck out of something where we said, we're going to make this great. And we played Sunflower. And we played these songs that made people feel good because sometimes it's about a gut. And what a terrible thing to think that the listener will be deprived of something great because it didn't meet the call-out research of some yum-yums that are going to listen to 15 seconds and say if it's good. Get out of here.
Well, and not only that, what's really sad, and I tell people, right now you've got people judging music who have no knowledge or history or understanding of what it is that relates to the public. It's the equivalent of Nicki Minaj judging Aretha Franklin on her singing talent. Who is she to judge when you really come from such a limited scope of talent in the first place, and you're more of a caricature of an artist than you are of a singer, and back then, when you talk about, Shay Shay LaFemme with Corey Day and Darnell, regional records no longer exist. There's no way to make a regional record because everything is a nationalized, homogenized playlist today.
That's right.
Whereas back then a record may have broke here in Chicago, like Cruise with Smokey Robinson, was the flip side of a release that WGCI was breaking. That became a national hit. They decided, okay, let's go with Cruisin' instead. And like you said with Corey Day, it was a regional record that eventually broke. There's no ability to do that anymore. So people who live in Chicago are getting fed the same quarter pounder that they're getting in Anchorage, Alaska. You know what I mean?
Well, that's until I give them the double extra 3-pound John Luongo radio show that comes up and says the world's going to listen to me. I'm not a braggart, but you know what? I match my ears and my taste against anybody of any generation, and I know what's going on today. I'm smart enough to realize you're only as good as what you do today, and my understanding of this music is spot on. I know what Avicii does. I know what Dead Mouse does. I know what Zed does. I listen to them, and, they're not really changing that much. They're not really reinventing anything. Where I applaud them is they're smart enough to say, you know what, let's do a record that's ours. Let's get some nameless girl or a guy to sing it. Let's put it out, and then what we'll do is we'll tour because people will love that record, and they'll see us playing our record. But that's, and that's great. I think that's a great idea. I wish I had done it because I'd be a gazillionaire. I don't think you could count the money I would have. I'd say, here's Dan Hartman, and here's Jack D. Moore, and here's the Jacksons. I would have looked like a genius. But I don't begrudge anybody that. The future is wide open for opportunity. But what I say is, if you have somebody that has a focus, that has an opinion, whether you agree with him or disagree with him. One of the greatest things you can have is like when you have somebody that you would disagree with, you respect but you disagree with vehemently, you're still attracted to that person as much as you are somebody that you respect and agree with vehemently. There are no focuses anymore. There are no portals. I want to be the portal for all of this music so that everything dance. Like a Peter Tong, who is a friend of mine, has a radio show. God bless him. I think he did great. I have all the letters where he said, John, what do you think of this record? John, can you help me with Junior? John, can you do this? I had so many John letters. And now John's going to do it, and he's going to be the person that brings it to the people. It's time. And with all now's a good time too, Sal, with the internet radio, with internet television, with all these things coming on, I can reach the world. You know what? I'm willing to put my ears, my eyes, and my heart against anybody. And that's not being, like I said, it's not cocky. It's more about the desire to see people learn the right way. It's like watching a generation play golf and hitting the ball wrong and say, you know something, here's a better way to do it. And there are some great things. Don't get me wrong. I think Bruno Mars is a genius. I love him, and I love the fact he's wrecked. He's got the heart of a buccaneer when it comes to his songs. They don't all sound the same. They're different. There's a lot of great people out there and a lot of great disc jockeys that are doing good. I think what Dead Mouse did was wonderful. Whether you like it or not. Yeah, so what? He doesn't know how to make a chorus yet. I mean, he doesn't know how to write a verse, but he can write a chorus. And that's why a lot of these songs have just one little chant in them, because they don't know how to write the rest of the song. Yes,
But see, and that's the growth, and the evolution too, John, of an artist. Just like house music. When house music started with a bunch of beat tracks, so a DJ who couldn't mix couldn't possibly go off beat any longer. And now you're at this point with EDM and dance where it's evolving. I mean, Avicii's new album. I mean, there is some great material, and he's taking a lot of heat because he's gone away from the fist pumping, mindless nonsense of the early electro house sound to taking it with the songs, with hooks and vamp and verses and a bridge. It's the evolution of the artist in that genre. So that gives me a lot of hope because, like you, John, I got into internet radio 17 years ago and was building networks since then because it was the only place you can go to say, man, people need to hear this shit. You're missing out on blues. You're missing out on jazz, on bluegrass, all this music, and all the back catalog that you don't hear anymore in traditional methods of radio. Or you don't hear any of this. So that's why
you don't hear it. Look, I can tell you right now, we had this. This isn't about looking back at something saying, when I was a kid. No. This is nothing like that. I embrace love. I love what's new. I love technology. You know what I love most of all, Sal? I love great. So you give me great, and I'm not going to unembrace it. I'm going to say, I think you did such a great job. I love so many of these songs that are out there. I mean, there's wonderful dance songs that exhilarate you and make the hairs on your arms rise, just like there are some great rock, pop, R&B songs. But the thing you want to know is that when we were doing a lot of these records, we were really lucky because dance was open to everything. I mean, listen to the record, Steely Dan, Do It Again, #1 pop, #1 alternative. Cape Brothers, Union Man, AOR record. You had songs by Bonnie Bramlett. You had songs by Kraftwerk, so you had an electronic thing. You had a song called Blackgrass that was like I did anything. It was a fiddle song. It was gigantic. It's almost like Cotton Eye Joe. There was hundreds of these. the point I'm making is when you had records like Give It To Me by Jay Giles, which was a reggae funky song that everybody played, we were more open to play all kinds of music because we weren't afraid. We weren't afraid of what our parents thought. We weren't afraid of our program director or anybody. And today, this is a generation of fear, a generation of living, keeping to the rules. You cannot grow. You cannot be successful if you follow the rules. You can't. Nobody grows.
Nothing
ever
changes.
Made a mark by doing that.
When you mentioned that about playing when you're WBMX, when we were at WBMX in the 80s, one of the things that was ironic is that it was a black radio station, but you were hearing Tears for Fears, Talking Heads, George Michael.
There you go.
You were hearing other music. It wasn't about the color of a person. It was about the soul of the song. It was about the rhythm and the feeling.
You're absolutely right. And you see, I can hear it in your voice because that's what made you love what you did. Because you were given the latitude to say, this is a great song. It's not a great white song, black song, straight song, gay song, ethnic song. It's a great song.
It needs no adjective. No adjective required.
No adjective. And wasn't it refreshing? Sal, Sonny's, you're right, at the black station in Boston, would be adding What a Fool Believes. And I'm telling him, why don't you tear the roof off the mother sucker? That's the difference, It's like he was wonderfully sensitive towards songs. He's the one that brought me. He called me on the phone and said, John? I said, yes. He said, stop everything you're doing. I said, okay. He said, you have got to mix this record. I said, Sonny, I have so many schedules I can't do this. She said, John, you've got to mix this. I promise you, if you mix it, you'll make it into something I can play, and I will play the hell out of it on Kiss. And I want you to mix it. I said, okay, because he and I were best friends. Well, he sends me the record. It's Shine On Silver Moon by Marilyn McCool.
Oh, Marilyn McCool. Yeah,
so we invented so many sounds on that. You hear that tick, 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 that starts. That is, I went in every session. Here's the first thing I said. I clap my hands and I say, we must invent a sound that's never before been heard by human ears. And everybody who's ever worked with me will know that is the first thing I say before every single session I do. Because I wanted to put the pressure on us to say, I wanted to free us from having to sound like what was there. So we could be daring and never lose the fact that experimentation is the key to staying on top of your game. It's invigorating, it's wonderful, it's scary, and it's everything good because it puts you in an uncomfortable position. And like anybody else, if you're sitting on your butt and you're not comfortable, you just keep moving your butt until that thing feels good. Well, it's the same thing with music and creation. You keep moving around until you found something that made you comfortable. It forces you to do that. So I went in and I told the percussionist, I said, I don't want you to play the same old percussion. I need a sound. He said, well, how about this? And the guy was Jimmy Nailin. He took out his conga drum. He took his two sticks that were plastic sticks, mylar sticks. And he started hitting the side of the conga, and instead of like on the conga, went tick, 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 tick. And if you play the song, that's the hook. And then I just built it, and I let Marilyn McCool come in, and they loved it. They invited me out to L.A. after that. I worked with them on different projects. They were going to be signed to my label at one point. They were the most incredibly generous, kind, talented people in the world, Marilyn McCool and Billy Davis. But that's the magic that we had happening. Is you get it off and somebody said, you got to do this.
You know what my favorite part of that whole track was, Jen? The string. I'm a sucker for string arrangements and horns.
Love that. Right?
Oh, it's just the beauty of of the strings coming in and the gradual increase of them, and that was my big thing about disco, is that I loved the arrangements. My mother, my family comes from the industry, and my mother did jingles and background vocals for everybody under the sun through the years. And she would pound her feet from the living room. My music room was in the basement, and she would pound her feet, telling me to turn that stuff down. You're gonna break the windows. When it was disco. And I said, but Mom, listen to stuff. And she would listen to it, and she would, she would say, okay, it's not, because she would hear the same thing I was hearing. She would hear like a voice from Marilyn McCoo, or she would hear those lavish string arrangements, or the horn section, or the rhythm section, because she dealt with that on a daily basis. But my father, being a jazz musician, absolutely not. Didn't want to have any part of any of it. He's like, no, that's not Stan Kenton. It's not Glenn Miller. It's not, Maynard Ferguson. Nope, don't want to hear it. But hearing all those arrangements, and, and we've gotten to a point where everything is very simplified in music today. I don't hear a lot of depth in production the way we heard back then. And once again, it's not, like you said, it's not just two guys talking about, because I don't live in the past. I cherish it, and I love what I'm working on today. But when you do arrangements, I don't hear a lot of that stuff anymore. And it's kind of sad.
That's very sad. I mean, I feel like, Sal, you and I are very lucky. And we're very lucky, and I'm sure my kids are going to be lucky, too, in the generations you touch. I have a young boy named Cody, who I love. He I don't know why, but he decided he's on the radio at Lynn University in Boca Raton. He was in media communication. He wants to spin records, and he wants to do promotions, and he loves dance music. Now, I don't know really where that came from, but I'm going to call him Little John. But the point is, I'm teaching Cody, and I tell him about what it means, what the people who made music mean, and to listen to the strings. And I'm teaching him about being important. And I said, Cody, the way you become important is by making yourself indispensable. Be the person that plays the song, tells the people why you're playing the song, tick them off to things before they come relevant, connect them with the clubs in the area, make sure all of the local press know about it, and spread the word. Make yourself like a little powerhouse to affect everybody, and then go in the clubs and play them, and then talk to these people and find out where their heads are at, and enlighten them. And the reason I'm bringing that point up is when I was a kid, just like you, I know what you did already, Sal, because I can tell from talking to you. You didn't care about the name of the record. You looked at the back at the credits that was so small that you said, this is like the Godfather in the head of a pin,
Yeah.
And Gene Page, okay? Gene Page, one of the greatest arrangers of strings of our time, and nobody knows him, but everybody could live without him. Barry White's arrangements were greater than Barry White's vocal. Love Unlimited, he was married to one of them. So when they were doing those songs, and I go walking in the rain, before anybody knew who they were, Barry was there doing those arrangements. Barry came from that. David Vanderpit arranged What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. Are you kidding me? Those are the things that made the music great. The guitar players like Bobby Eli, the bass players like Dan Hartman, who played on people.
All the studio musicians. All the studio musicians.
No credit, but the heart and soul of the business. And I, like you, grew up with a reverence and respect for them. It really puts you right in your place when you're looking at these little teeny tiny credits and you say, I'm not the star, but I want to be the person in the background behind the star that they couldn't make it without my effort, that I contributed. And with that attitude, it keeps you humble, and it makes you also have a rich appreciation for music.
Oh, yeah, because you're diversified, as a musician. One day you're doing a disco show, next day you're doing a classical show, next day you're in the studio working with a rock band, because, and like you said, I would look at the back of an album, or even on the 12s, John. I would look on the 12, and, ironic, I couldn't do math, but, man, I could tell you the time of literally every 12-inch, who was the producer, who directed the track, the address of the label, what was on the...
That's exactly right. You probably remember a time when you actually knew the names of the members in the band.
Yeah, who the guitar player was, who the producer was, what else that producer worked on, what that producer's history was, little notes. Again, these were all important things to you when you were in the music business back then. And they're still important to me now. I mean, still to this day. Like when I would see, when I would see your name on a record, it was like, oh, well, I got to play it.
If you ever wanted to know the greatest compliment I ever got, it's like you never get it from the artist or the record label and all that stuff, and that was important to me. But the greatest compliments I ever got was from DJs who said, we just got this new stack of records in from the record pool, and we go in and we look at them, and we were going to play that night, and if it said John Luongo on it, I would always take that record in, knowing that more chances than not it would be something that was dear to me that I could play that would sound great and make my crowd go wow. I mean, that is the most humbling thing in the world, and it's the nicest thing anybody's ever said.
And, and from back then, I mean, when I would see your name, or I would see Vince Montana's name, and you carry that forward to today, and all through the years. I mean, even in the 80s, if you saw John's name, if you saw Jellybean's name on something, or Shep Pettibone's name on something, you were going to play it. When you got into the 90s, if you saw Steve Hurley's name on something, or if you saw Motivate's name on something, you were going to play it. Now, today, you see Tiesto's name, chances are you're going to play it. If you see Skrillex's name, it's the same. In that vein, John, nothing's changed, Nothing's changed in that vein.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. And you said something very, very, very true, which is great. It's like, you don't live in the past, but you can reflect there. I don't live there because if you want to live in the past, then everything I've done marks the end of my career, and I should put the John Luongo tribute together and say goodbye. But I mean, my greatest things I believe are coming because I know what I have up my sleeve as far as ideas, and I understand the music, and I'm putting the time in to stay up till 4:30 in the morning sometimes just to listen. I mean, because I'm motivated. It's not like you do it every night. Oh, I've got to stay up till 4:30. But there are times when you say, wow, my heart's pounding, everything's exciting, my nerve endings are on edge, and I got to listen, I got to do something. So I know what the future's going to be, but I love the fact that you can respect the past, but not be shackled by it. I reflect on it, but then I live in today. I used to say, I worked with Little Steven, the greatest, one of the greatest rock and rollers of all time, for 5 years. I ran his record label, licensing, publishing, marketing, merchandising, oversaw 18 bands in 10 countries. You talk about pressure? He would call me at 2 in the morning and say, are you awake? And I'd say, I am now. He's out of his friggin' mind. He said, he was manic depressive and the nicest guy in the world, but he's so demanding that I would get a call if there was a half a second, honest to God, a half a second too much time between songs on a record that we put out 6 months ago. I listened to this transition between those two songs, and it was a half a second too much. And I'm thinking to myself, what's sharp enough around me that I can kill myself? And, oh, my God. I used to tell him, I said, the three of us should sit down. And he would say, there's only me and you. I said, me, you, and the evil personality. Let's sit down and have a conversation here. We're like two married people. But I love him, and I said, well, if you're the greatest music person in the world, then that must make me the greatest one because I oversee everything you do.
Yeah. So, when you talk about the record pools, John, which, and also you mentioned AOR, I think we should clarify for those who have no clue, that would be album-oriented rock, which is a format that no longer exists.
Right.
But,
albums don't exist, oriented doesn't exist in rock.
Yeah, and, today, I love the idea today that, man, I can listen to so much, sample so much, find so much. The only thing that's missing from that, and this is what technology does, it's very antiseptic, it's great, I love technology, but there's the interaction you have with other DJs when you would go to the pool to pick up your records, back in the day, you'd go to the pool, and everybody had their own ego, everybody had their own personality, and there are all these DJs that, you're playing that shit sucks, why don't you play that? Well, that shit you're playing. There would be such great discussions going on at the pool with DJs that were picking up all this new product. And, now today, with the pools, you just download your stuff with the pool, or if the labels are sending everything, which every label sends you out everything now. And the only thing I really miss, I don't know, buddy, I miss just hanging, even with DJs that I thought were real assholes. I didn't mind being around them because even sometimes they had something interesting to say.
And no, that's an absolutely wonderful. You see, you just said something that's the key to success. There's two keys. One is being around an asshole is very important, because usually when you're an asshole, you got some kind of an attitude. And what you do is you listen to them, and even if they're in their asshole-ish, what happens is they have something that they bring to the table that you can learn from. I used to tell people, and they say, I hate rap. And I say, you know what? Something's selling 2 million copies. There's something to learn there. I got rap down when I figured out, I'll never forget, I was at Studio 54 and listening to this party, and all of a sudden I'm sitting down and I go, I fucking got it. Excuse my language. I hope I don't offend you.
Oh, we're on the other
I said, I have it.
The FCC rules are long gone, John.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay, it's the FUU now, not the FCC. All right, well, I said there's two things I wanted to know. Why did they make dissonance? Okay, these chords, they're playing two chords and they're smashing together. And I'm saying these chords don't even make sense. They would make dead people want to raise from the dead to get away from it. But what I found out is chords that are wrong dissonantly create a thickness. And it was that thickness, that dissonant thickness over a bass line, that made the bottom hit you in the groin and hit you in the chest. And the kids loved that. And then everything on top was a nursery rhyme. Every single rap was a nursery rhyme from Mother Goose. There was not a rap out there in the freaking world that wasn't a nursery rhyme. So I said, okay, so that appeals to the little kids. Then I understood rap. From that point on, I got it. I understood all of it and what it was doing, and the offensive of the lyrics. I'm not the police. I'm not the moral police. I understand some people do that for effect. But the point I'm making, and what you made, is that if you listen to music, even the music you don't like, you will learn something from it. Maybe you'll take one element that you don't like, that you do like, bring it into yours. The worst case scenario is you're expanding your musical palette. And that's what I don't see today. Kids, they started for a little while. I mean, my kid was already got a guitar and he's playing Smoke on the Water and, the riff from Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin. And all of a sudden he goes into, here is Skrillex and, Fat Boy Slim and the Flying Mazzilli Brothers. Because they're crazy. Because the problem with that is kids don't have any attention span. When kids finally, stop doing Molly and all this disgusting stuff, look, every generation did that stuff in some way. They had ecstasy, but it's terrible. It's terrible because if you really love what you do, why do you want to take something that would black you out enough to miss a moment of it? And that's the thing that I see
that's
today,
that's the malfunctioning human side of the human species. Because why would you electively put something so hideous in your body? See, I'm a guy, John, I go with the odds a lot of times in life, and I don't like to really roll the dice against the odds because you're going to lose your ass. So I'm not going to be popping pills. I'm not going to be throwing Molly in my body because I've seen the outcome. It ain't good.
It ain't good. It ain't good.
And all you got to do is roll a 7 once.
All you got to do is roll a 7 once, and you're gone. You're in the ground.
You're gone. And you know what? These kids don't know, and they overdo, and they're not watching out for each other. I mean, we used to watch out for each other, and I don't feel everybody does that today. I mean, some of them may, but God forbid, you OD, it's too late. By the time you've OD'd, it's too late. And I think, they could have so much fun. Look, I know they drink and do things like that, and I'm not being a stick in the mud because they'll smoke the pot or do this stuff.
Who didn't do that?
Who didn't do all this stuff, right? But the bottom line is, I just think I think it's a little bit less restricted and less supervised than it was before, because everybody watched out for themselves before, and now you have a generation of kids that don't have money. And so they're going to buy inferior crap. You don't even know what anybody puts into this stuff. And why would you want to see, when I hear an event in New York or somewhere where 5 to 7 people die, my heart's broken. Because those kids are all going out there in order to have some fun. I mean, the one thing that you and I can agree on, Sal, for sure, is that dance music was conceived to be able to forget about the troubles that you have in your life and for a brief moment just reunite with some friends and just have some exhilarating, carefree, safe fun. Why would you want to take one of those elements away? And that's where I have an issue. That's where I have an issue. And if they find anybody selling that crap to the kids, they should put them in jail. And I don't care if they're 16. They should stay in jail for 10 years because it's not right what they risk putting some poor kid in, and poor parents, at risk of. It's not right.
The list of things that gets damaged by the people who sell it is endless, and a lot of kids are so busy recording it rather than taking care of it. If a kid is affected by it, they're sitting there, oh, let's put this on YouTube. No, asshole, call the ambulance. Your friend is sick.
That's right.
It's like the mindset has just been numbed. If I had a friend,
you're absolutely right.
If I had a friend who was,
and you know what, Sal? We came from a generation that worked through all these things and had all the issues. So this isn't about like your parents. I don't look at myself like my parents because,
exactly.
I appreciate every generation's rights to do everything, and I applaud them, right?
Yep.
This is just about individuals caring about other individuals. That's what you and I are about.
It's about being a human being with feelings, because and John, you can attest to this, especially today when you have so many people that are we've been in the industry for, but you got so many people today who are our age who look at the music and they say, "Oh, that shit sucks." I'm like, well, wait a minute. Back in the '50s when Chuck Berry and Little Richard were doing Tutti Frutti, those weren't the most incredibly intelligent lyrics or songs ever made. Okay, and those kids grew up with it. Then the 60s and the 70s came along, and then when you grew up in the 50s and the music of the 70s, of disco and funk, you said, that ain't real music. I don't ever want to sound like my grandparents. You know what I mean?
No, well, that's why you're still doing an interview with me and doing things, because you know what, you're open-minded. I think the greatest thing you can teach a child or a generation is love what you love, enjoy it to the fullest, but just be open to a different platter and a different kind of excitement in your life. Try to enhance what you do. I mean, like everybody was talking about Miley Cyrus and her lewdness and all that stuff with Robin Thicke. I get it. I understand it. But, what they don't understand is this. What Elvis did with his legs going back and forth to that generation before us was the same thing. It was as irreverent and filthy. He might as well pull his zipper down and have his Paparini come out. That was as bad as it made your father and your grandfather and everybody feel back then. And the fact that she has people talking means that it worked. Because in our business, if they're not talking about you, good or bad, they don't notice you. And now what she'll do is she'll go on her way. She gets millions of record sales, and then she'll say, "I've seen the light." And she'll come in and she'll do like a gospel album, and everybody will love her because they want to retrieve her. But this is all calculated and it's fun. It doesn't bother me,
And watching it, and once again, you get into this whole elective behavior. I can either elect to give a shit or not give a shit. I don't, why somebody wants to. I see that, and I know, like you said, it's calculated. I'm like, okay, good, because there's a lot of morons out there that are going to fall for that.
Absolutely.
That to me, that kind of. But you know what also does in a way? To me, it dilutes from the factor. If I didn't know that Wrecking Ball was her, if I didn't know that Ashtrays or whatever, that's the track what she had the first release off the album, we're talking about Miley, was with her and Snoop. There's some damn good material, man. There were some damn good songs there. But then they go into, at least from my eyes, it gets diluted when you're humping a pole or you're humping some guy's leg. It's like, look, the song's doing the singing, but I understand. You got to sell more records. You got to keep your brand name out there. For me as a person, it bores the shit out of me. It doesn't mean I'm going to shit on the song. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that, I'm sad that you got to go through that to get through, because if you're not constantly doing something bizarre, the ADD population isn't going to know you exist.
That's right. Exactly right.
Because Wrecking Ball Wrecking Ball is a great album, man. And Applejack, dropped. I think it was over the weekend. Applejack was doing a show in Michigan. We had a news story on it, and he was doing a show in Michigan, and he dropped 3 minutes of the remix that he did on Wrecking Ball. And the album version, the original version, there's a great record. There's great harmonies there. It's a song. There's song structure. It's verse, hook, bridge, verse, vamp out. There's a song. It's shocking.
Yep.
But
it's amazing.
It's just a shame that sometimes the theatrics, but like you said, we look at it, you could look back in the 70s, what Gene Simmons was doing with Kiss, and what Parliament was doing, what Earth, Wind & Fire was doing, with the outfits, and
of course. Hey, remember Gene Simmons with his tongue that was 14 feet long? He'd stick it down every girl's throat in the world. That was all right. I mean, it's a gig. Some people were a little bit more offensive, and not for nothing, but like when the Stones, when Mick Jagger would come up and grab his crotch and walk around and prance, was that any? I mean, that was to our parents or to people before them, that was considered vulgar. I think the fact is you have to separate the performer from the action sometimes. Sometimes the performers are just doing what they need to be sensational and get your attention. There's a lot of people out there today, and they're doing a lot of things, and the only way to get some attention is doing something a little bit over the line.
When you mentioned that Mick Jagger, now my neighborhood, you're Italian. I grew up on the south side here in Chicago. My neighborhood, whenever we saw some guy grab his crotch like that, we figured, oh God, he's got crabs.
And some of them only needed a little mayo, and they could have had a sandwich for a week. You're right. You sounded like Jim Croce, bad Leroy Brown on the south side of Chicago. I mean, you know what's funny? I just want to bring one point. I learned when I first came up in radio, they said, you must talk like you come from Chicago, because that's the perfect accent. There is no accent. So when I talk on radio, I never have an accent. People can't tell I'm from Boston unless I go Boston, and sometimes I can sound Canadian, but you try to remove that, because Chicago always had it was a universal accent that everybody all over the world could relate to.
Well, it's funny when you talk about the Boston accent, because a good friend of yours and mine, who I love to death, is Joey Carvello.
Oh, good God, if I'm not going to say Trino Venus, hold on, let me get the garlic out. Joey, if you could only understand him, Joey means if he came with like auto slow, you'd be okay. I can hear him talking now. Hey, no, how you doing, Sal? Oh, Sal, I said, Joey, what does that mean? Hey, Sal, how are you doing? It's been a long time since I've seen you.
Put them on 33 RPMs, and you're still going to need to slow it down.
Are you kidding me? You put him on 33, and you need a shot glass of quarters to still be able to understand what he's saying.
Put him on.
The guy is like, he's the only guy. I'll give you one quick story. I'm over there sitting having a discussion about the Boston. I own Nightfall magazine and the Boston Record Pool, so I'm talking with the business director, and I had just made Joey the head of the Boston Record Pool. Okay. I don't know why. It was a weak moment. So we're sitting here. All of a sudden, this is on Kenmore Square. He comes running down the fire escape, opens the window, runs through the office and out the front door. Behind him comes a guy who was a little baseball bat that was trying to club him on the head because he had just screwed his girlfriend upstairs from the house that was above us. I said, and I looked at Arnie, and we didn't even move. It was Arnie Wood, and I said, and we just looked at each other, and then we resumed our conversation, because that was typical.
It's no big deal. Just another moment in the day. No big deal.
No, Joey's running through getting chased by somebody trying to club him with a baseball bat. That's fine. Joey closed it the next time he goes through. So, but he's a good guy. He's got a lot of heart. He's got a passion for the music, and he used to come and see me at the Rhinoceros and couldn't figure out how I could spin records with two turntables with rubber bands, with two AR turntables.
It's come a long way, man.
I love the disc jockey style. I love the people. I love reminiscing, and I love also thinking about tomorrow. Like I said, I'm not stuck in the past, but I just think there's a lot of opportunity out there, and I think the best is yet to come for you. If you're really talented and you're hungry and you want this, you can grow. I look at myself as being able to take a whole generation, starting with my son Cody, and enlightening them to what you can do, the possibilities. I mean, I want to break down some of the barriers. Like, the worst thing that these disc jockeys ever had was auto speed. I mean, beat match. I mean, I want to take me and three other disc jockeys, from our generation and bring 3 other disc jockeys, give me the number 1, 2, and 3 guys. Let's go out there, hand us each a stack of 1045s at different speeds, and let's see who puts together the more interesting night. No beat match, no nothing. Be creative and see how you can come up with something. I think they'll look like monkeys. They won't know what to do.
Yeah.
You know? Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the key to success is not beat matching. The key to success is taking something that's 98 beats a minute, making it work its way into something that's 133 creatively, and bringing excitement up. The key is to break and evening up. The monotony is which eventually will kill a lot of these formats. You just can't listen to the same thing all night long because kids can't drink that much to keep entertained, you know?
Yeah, you know, it's funny you mentioned that because years ago, a good friend of mine, you probably, I don't know if you remember Mickey, Mitch, and Oliver. Mickey was one of the Hot Mix 5 members at WGMX back in the day. And way back then, if you remember, and here's another thing that a lot of DJs miss out on today is those great remix services that existed back in the day with Disconnect and Razor Made and, all these other services. And Mickey had done 2 different medleys. Now, before digital editing, there was a thing called the Blade, and your reel-to-reel, and that was it.
Oh, my God.
That's all you had. And Mickey had done a medley where it was Hunks and Chunks, Part 1, and he had gone from Celebration in the medley, splicing to get from that 124 beats a minute to 151 beats a minute, where he was able to mix with it coming out of Celebration. Now, that's telling you how long ago that was.
Wow.
You're going back to 1981 when Mickey, or 81 when he did that. But like you said, it's, sometimes it's not just about keeping the mix, it's about different styles and different ways of presenting the music to that room and to that floor. Because some of these EDM concerts, look, when you go to an EDM show, if you go see, like this kid Robot Dennis or even Skrillex, he may be up at 125 BPMs, and then next thing you know, he's dropped down to 93. And you're like, holy shit, man, that was wicked. And it didn't have anything to do with mixing.
And that's the excitement of music. That's where music, that's where you use it. And one of the things, that's what I try to tell my boy Cody, is like, have the heart of an assassin. Go into this knowing that it's like you got to do it with confidence. If you're going to try something, better to be in a position where you're going to fail miserably and be mocked and everybody despises you than to just kind of meekly get from one to the other. That's no courage. Success and greatness comes with risk of embarrassment, failure, and dejection. That's the way you do it. It's that fear of not wanting to look like an idiot. It makes you good. Oh, God, I don't want to look like a freaking idiot. I don't want to be like this guy.
And you know what, John? The electronics today afford you the luxury of doing everything we could have possibly wanted to do in the DJ booth 30 years ago. You have so many options at your fingertips in that booth today with the electronics. So really,
as a disc jockey, you and I had about 4 options. We had playing 2 records at the same time, which was phasing and flanging. We had the ability to take the bass out and put it back. We had the ability to take the treble out and put it back. And we had the ability to take a matchbook and stick it in between the platter and the actual turntable so that it could slow the speed down. Aside from that, we were pretty much screwed. Okay?
That was it.
So, so don't tell me about the Pioneer DDJSX, which you can play things backwards and forwards. Because that's 80% of your game right there. Now, I appreciate people that can use it, and I think it's great. But the fact is, we had such limited availability to enhance an evening, and in some ways that was good, because that means that your music selection and the way you played your music had to be spectacular. I can remember going back and forth. There was a record I broke in Boston because I had 245s and I just played it for 13 years. It was Dreamin' a Dream by the Crown Heights Affair. And that was me. And I would have to go back and forth, and I'd even make myself get exhausted. I said, okay, I got 1 minute. Go to the next one. Cue it up. Put it on. Next one. Go back to this one. So, I appreciate the scratching and everything. That was an unbelievably wonderful talent that the DJs in hip-hop and rap brought in. And, but, we did just as much and maybe more because we invented something to do to a record that nobody could do. Remember you made the long version? People are thinking, oh man, Isley Brothers, who's that lady? It's part 1 and part 2. I hope the album comes out. And we get daring and we play the part 1 and take the 45 and play the other part, and people didn't know, and all of a sudden they go nuts. Same thing with Do It Again, and I'll Always Love My Mama, and Boss Skaggs, Slow Down. All these records were records we made long versions from. So, we did the same thing.
A long time ago, I was sitting. I was at some. I think it was. It had to be prop. I think it was a new music seminar, and Flash was on a panel, and because we were club DJs mixing, and and hip hop brought the street element to it, which I was like, wow, this is so. I don't know why they do that shit to the record, but damn, it's some cool shit, whatever they're doing. So I just asked them after the panel, I said, really? I said, just tell me the truth. Were you just really bored one day and you left the cue, you left your mixer in the middle, and you heard that scratch, and you were like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then you started doing it more and more. Is that how scratching really started, dude? Because I didn't know to do that. I just thought it came out of boredom, waiting for the break.
No. Actually, Sal, I invented scratching. Okay, it's a funny story. When I went to work at the townhouse, they didn't have a cue system. So for your listeners, what that means is you either play the left turntable or the right turntable, but you don't know what one's doing when you're playing left or right. So it was all left or all right. And so what I would do, I had no way of hearing anything. So what I would do is I'd go in there an hour before I play, and I would take my records and I'd put the volume up, and I would turn the little platter around until it made the first sound, and I'd put a black magic marker there and go back a quarter of a turn.
Good viewpoint.
And that was my cue system. So in the middle of the evening, one record's playing, and you could hear, when I'm about to play the other one, you hear. And that was me as sign of the intro. I can't believe that's the stuff we did. Editing with tape. I edited with scissors. I edited cassettes with scissors to find out how my mixes would sound because we had no digital anything. So I would play one. I'd use the pause button of a cassette and record it and stop it at the right spot, bring in the next record, and then try to do it. And if it wasn't close enough, what I would do is I'd pull the cassette out and I'd edit little tiny eighth-inch pieces out and put it together with Scotch tape so I could hear how my mixes would be. That was my cue system. That was my Pro Tools.
On that note, Jen, I want to go look.
Well,
I got a Pioneer around here. I got one of those old CTFs around here somewhere. I'm going to go see what I can do with that thing. But Jen, it's an honor to be able to talk to you, and I'm, as I've said, and you're a lot like me. When we look at it, it's like, my God, these are really. It's amazing to see how far it's come from where it started. And these are great times to be in the business. Yeah, it
really is. It's very gratifying. I respect the young disc jockey. I respect the art form. I hope they stay creative and fresh and never get fearful. And I hope they don't listen to the majors who will, if they sign to them, will homogenize them. They have to stay true to the dance floor.
They'll suit them up and not whore them out, bore them out.
The majors were responsible for that big, disco sucks burning in Chicago because they made disco. They took everything and made it disco. They even mocked their own genre with disco duck and all these stupid things.
Well, you know what, Jim? When it happened here, Disco DAI, which was pretty much similar to the station you were at, they would do a thing called Hot Tracks every night of the week. They would do, which was like a different DJ at a different club, what their biggest tracks were. Then they were doing mix shows with Lou DeVito, Peter Lewicki, I think it was Scott Adams, were on Disco DAI. And then Disco DAI, without changing its format, started morphing its format before it eventually officially changed its format because disco officially died. And here's the irony of this, and I mentioned this in an interview that I did. I said, disco died, for all intents and purposes, in Chicago
at Comiskey Park for Disco Demolition, where you had a bunch of hippies walking around blowing up Marvin Gaye records. They didn't even have water. They didn't even have the real disco records. All they had was a bunch of, they didn't even know what disco was, but they had this guy who got fired for doing mornings at a radio station, man at the station, for flipping the disco. He went over to the Loop, which is the radio station, 97.9 here in Chicago, and he assembled a bunch of dudes to go to Comiskey Park to blow up disco records. So disco died that summer officially here in Chicago, and the irony is that house music was born 3 years later in this very same city. And
that's exactly right, and that was Steve So Curly and so many great people like him, brought such wonderful attention back. They just they reinvented it, didn't they?
Yeah, because, after disco, Johnny, at least here in Chicago, it was rough club-wise because, other than the R&B dance, for lack of a better term, the Whispers and anything that was coming off of Solar at the time, Modern Romance, Sky, Atlantic's dance department pretty much was gone, it was decimated. And there wasn't really a lot of, it was just R&B dance, and then High Energy, it had its moment in the sun with, Patrick Cowley and Megatone and Moby Dick Records and Boris Midney and these guys. And then all of a sudden Arthur Baker comes out of nowhere, and radio across the country, at least club-wise, for the mixes, it was like the Arthur Baker Hour from 1982 to 1984. That's all you heard was something that had Arthur Baker's name on it. Then Jesse Saunders comes along with his track, and then house music, starts getting its legs here and spreads to where it is today. And I had this discussion with Jesse Saunders yesterday, where a lot of the old school house guys, they're screaming, that ain't house music, that ain't. Well, look, man, that's this generation's version of house. Just like in the 70s, when Aerosmith and Kiss were doing rock and roll, that was their version of what they grew up. That was their version of rock and roll. They respected the rock and roll, just like these kids do. Afrojack, Avicii, Tiesto, David Guetta. They mention the history of house. They're aware of it. They show the respect for it. But this is how they feel it. This is how they feel house today. And that's to me, it's beautiful because it's respect. And they feel it. They have the ability to do it different ways, and they do it. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't know why everybody wants to get so upset about it that it doesn't sound like 1987 house music. 1995 rock and roll.
Leave the kids. Let the kids have the latitude they need to be great and learn.
Creative.
If you open your mind and shut your mouth, you're going to learn a lot more. I love what they do. I love their failures. I love their accomplishments. I think, they have a little way to go, some of them. I think sometimes, they're a little bit showboating when you're putting your hands up there and doing the Jesus pose, and all of a sudden you haven't played a record or touched the knob in 20 minutes. Well, I think you should take a step back. I think you should stop looking like a Momo. Okay?
Maybe you should just go stand in the crowd, or just go stand in the crowd with the rest of the people and worship yourself.
Exactly, worship yourself. Say, I love me. That's it. And that's the way it should be. Just don't scam the people. And, sometimes I think some of these guys, I think David Guetta does a couple of things that are okay, but I think sometimes he's like, really, come on now, cut it out, okay? You did pretty good. Be grateful. Have some humility. You don't play an instrument. You can't write a song, but you can go in and go, yeah, that's not exactly the greatest talent in the world, but it is a talent, So that's what I think people have to do. I think the people in the business that are the disc jockeys should be grateful for what they got, because some of them don't deserve any of it, and some of them deserve a ton more than they get, Well,
it's like that saying in radio, the best people in radio are not working in it.
Isn't that sad? I used to tell people the greatest thing that radio gave, and I could tell you have it, is the radio disc jockey could turn on a person and make them love a song, make them love an artist by playing it with such an introduction, such passion, and such an incredibly empowered dissertation that you wanted to love that record and you were going to love it. I'll never forget it. There was a guy in Boston at WVBF named Bud Ballou. And when Blood, Sweat, and Tears came out with You Made Me So Very Happy, he played it 9 times in a row. He said, here's a song, bam, and every time he played it, I saw the power of the disc jockey. The hairs on my arms raised, and I said, I love the song. This is brilliant. And you would just listen because you wanted to see if he'd play it again. And that's the power of the disc jockey. Frankie Crocker, people, Ron Harper, the great Sonny Joe White, all of these people in every market. I'm sure you had tons in, Kid Leo, what he did down in Chicago, all of the other, and then Cleveland.
Well, look at Herb Kent. Herb Kent's in his 80s, and he's still doing it. He's still doing it, Herb Kent.
Because he loves people and he loves music.
Yeah,
and that's something that doesn't.
And those guys are fonts. Those guys are all fonts of information.
That's the key. That's the key. It's like anybody else can play a song, but they bring a memory with it. I just think there's such a great wealth of information that we will now have a chance to get out. I can't wait to have my show because it's gonna. I want people to know about Grover Washington and Mr. Magic. I want them to know about songs that they never heard of. I want to explain about music and where it came from and how you can take a rock and how Black Betty, how that became that's a rock song that made it into every club and was sampled all over the place. There's just no boundaries to it all,
And you know what? When I talk to friends, when I talk to friends, people who are working overseas, they sometimes they don't understand because it's a cultural difference. See, here in the States, I tell them, you got to understand, here in the States, dance music was the bastard child of radio and the bastard child of music forever. It never got an ounce of respect. You got PDs who were just stone rock and roll dudes, and that's it. They weren't going to give anything else a shot. And now all of a sudden, dance. When you start hearing Calvin Harris on a hot AC station, you know shit has changed, man. Shit has changed dramatically because that was unheard of. And this is why I get excited because I tell people, you don't understand that. When we started, I've been in this business since I was a kid, and all you ever fought for was like, hey, just listen to the song. I think people are going, oh, this is a great record. Why won't you play this record? Arguing with program directors and music directors because they were so pig-headed and absent-minded, and all they knew is rock and roll, rock and roll, rock and roll. I was like, dude, there's more to it than this. And now we're at that point, where the last 10 years, and people think I'm crazy when I say, look, if it wasn't, believe it or not, if it wasn't for Flo Rida taking shit up tempo, if it wasn't for Benny Benassi's Satisfaction in 2003, those are the records that kicked the door down and started opening avenues for more up-tempo music to finally hit radio here in the States, not necessarily Europe. It's a different world. But when you explain it to that people and you put it to them in that context, then they get it. It's because it's something we've never had here in the States. I've never been able to turn on the radio and hear 3 up-tempo songs in a row. Like, oh, wow, great. That's a change of pace.
That's right.
We didn't have it.
You see, the good thing is, the thing that's great, you have such a love of it, Sal, and it comes through. I probably just brought you down 25 years younger because you can hear your heart pumping, you can hear the energy, you can hear the knowledge, and it's fluid. It's not. You're not reading a book. You don't have to go on the internet to verify your comments. You lived it, and you love it, and you're appreciative of it, and you're appreciative of the future. That's the greatest thing we can do, is not be pontificating about everything we did was perfect, because not everything we did was perfect, not be dismissive, and allowing people to find themselves, and just being around to be able to verify a couple of things and maybe giving them a little direction and enlightenment.
Yeah,
that's the future.
Yeah, and I've never been a person, musically, and I'm sure you're the same, there's certain things that I hear that I just don't like. But you know what? It doesn't mean anything. I don't put ketchup on my hot dog either. That doesn't mean that some guy who puts ketchup on a hot dog, I'm going to hate him. It's just not my thing. That's all. And there's people, and where you came from, and where I came from as a club DJ, and into the studio, and into the record business. It was never about personal taste for me. It was like, all right, if I love it, I can't imagine what people are going to feel about this. They're going to love this. And I couldn't wait to get it to them.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right, and that's the wonderful part about this. You know, it's is that you don't want to be. You know, you're not dismissive of anybody. You just show me. Let me see something great. You got two ways of waking up in the music business. One, hating everything that you hear, being angry about what's going on, and wishing that you were part of something. And the other one is looking forward to hearing something great that excites you, saying that if you have an issue, go out and change it, and not being afraid. You cannot be fearful. If you're fearful, don't be in this business. If you want to play it safe, don't be in this business. If you've never cried, felt bad, felt dejected, or ruined, or at the balls of your ass, then you're not ready for the music business, because those are all things that you bring, that you must be ready for. It teaches you resilience, it teaches you self-belief, it teaches you heart, and it teaches you to be have taste. So that's all you're saying, and I believe in those things.
Yeah, nothing great has ever come from playing it safe.
Nothing. There's nobody there's no success that hasn't been frightened at one time in their life. None. Don't bullshit me and tell me, oh, I'm not afraid of anything. You bet your damn life you better be. You better be afraid of making a bad move or something, or putting yourself in a compromised position. Because if you're not, you have no chance of being great. You will not even be a footnote in history.
Yeah, you have to be able to recognize. You have to recognize things and then be able to overcome them. I mean, that's
right.
Especially for an artist. You know, an artist may say, I may not know. I don't know if I really want to go this direction, but I'm feeling it, so I got to try it. That's when you push the boundaries, when you push the envelope, and that's where greatness is derived.
Yep, it's exactly right.
All right, John, I'm going to, what started out as a short conversation.
Well, you did it again. You wasted all my time. I mean, you just took all my time. Now, you told me I get $10,000 a minute on this. That was the deal, right? No.
Oh, yeah, but you said horseradish, too. So
that's right. You told me. That's great. I'm getting horseradish on a hot dog. A typical Chicago deal. Mm-hmm. I got friends like you down there. My friend Danny Jandis, yep, that's him.
Well, you know what, John, if I could, when I did an interview with Mari Milani, two wonderful guys from Italy, DJs, producers, and for the interview, they were here in Chicago, so I went to the club to do the interview where they were at the Palladium here in Chicago, and I brought them some cannolis, right? I brought some nice homemade cannolis and some nice Italian cookies. They brought them up on the stage with them. They were so ecstatic to see food. So,
you know what? I want at least a cannoli from you after all this.
Look, if the beam me up thing was working, John, I would send you some nice gabardines, some meatballs, some brioche.
Okay. Don't make me hungry. Jesus, what's wrong with you? You have no shame, man. What's wrong with you?
It's lunchtime. It's time to eat.
Well, thanks very much for giving me the platform. And please send me a copy. I'd love to know where I can, get a copy of this and listen. It'd be great. And I wish you. Oh, by the way, I always mention my son Cody. I do want to say I do have another great son, DJ, who wants to be a animator and does do cartoons and comics and an illustrator. And he went to Ringling College of Art and Design. Cody is the music one, but DJ is equally as talented in his own area. So. Once he doesn't feel like a lost child.
Hey, when I send you this audio, once it's up online, when the conversation is online, you're going to have to scan all the way forward for him, because otherwise he's going to say, "Where the hell would you forget about me?" And you got to go, "No, here."
Yeah, that's right. I know. I'm doing it now to make sure I don't screw up. And and if anybody wants to, I'm just so you know too, Sal. While I'm out of. It's like I think I'm at the end of Facebook as far as being able to invite more people on. I have a John Luongo page that you can like, and we'll go on there on Facebook, and that's going to be updated. People are posting mixes and ideas, and I'm going to make comments and commentary about the future. So that's going to be as active as my regular page, and I'll look at it all the time to respond if anybody wants to use that.
Yeah, and what we will do for all of you listeners, if you're listening from another website or you're grabbing this as a podcast at edmamericatv.com, in the interview section, you'll find this interview along with all of John Luongo's social networking links and all of his website links and his information on that page where this interview comes from. So on behalf of little old me, John, Big Salamato, and EDM America TV, as well as WBMX.com, how ironic is that? We've owned WBMX.com for like 18 years. They didn't buy it over there when we bought it because they forgot it. You're in Boston, your hometown. We actually owned yeah, I mean, that's how far behind the curve radio was when it came to technology. We bought their name before they even owned it.
Wow.
Because we wanted to buy what we came from. That's where we came from. So that's what we bought.
Well, I just want to say I've really enjoyed the interview. I've enjoyed you. Your listeners are very lucky to have you because you got passion. And you know, Sal, there's no substitute for that, and there's no way of teaching it to somebody later in life. Passion is either born with you or you just never get it. Okay, so I'm proud to be talking to you, and I hope everybody keeps listening to you. I hope you keep growing, and I look forward to seeing you in person sometime.
Very, very good. Me too, John. Hopefully, if you're going to make it down to the Winter Music Conference, we can break a little bread.
That'd be great. We'll have a cannoli.
or a dozen.
Okay, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I like to overdo my cannolis. John, it was great
to
meet you.
Well, thank you.
Enjoy. Take care of yourself, and we'll send this out. Once it's up, I'll shoot you an email so you can have it. All right?
Thanks, Sal. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Take care.